bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen. Here we go! Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate. We love to argue. You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
It is a Combine Tuesday morning here on Birds 365. You got John McMullen and Jody McDonald hanging with you to talk Eagles football for the next 2 hours. And yes, the focus goes to Indianapolis, John, where the underwear Olympics will take place. Guys running around in shorts and T-shirts and trying to open up the eyes of all 32 organizations, most specific to us, the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's kind of an important day because both Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni will meet the media. Not all the media, because some of the media, like John McMullen, are still here in town. But a portion of the Eagles beat guys will be in Indianapolis and get a chance to ask questions at Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni. Before we get specific, just in general, you think anything of really significant, anything surprising is going to come out of either of those two sessions today, or will it just be kind of getting the stuff?
Yeah, not in front of the camera. I think they're both well versed enough to keep everything muddied in front of the camera, behind the camera, which is why I'm always disappointed when I'm not out at these types of things. You might get some information. They might do an off the record session where you get some legit information, but I think it's going to be typical, off season. I think it's more important for Howie than Nick. Although our buddy Marcus Hayes dropped something today, so I'm sure Nick will get asked about that. So Marcus is out there helping some people, but the coaching staff and things like that, you'll get questions from that perspective. But I mean, to me, this offseason is about getting the personnel back up to where we thought it was, to be honest, before last season, particularly on the defensive side. And that's Howie's season. But he's not going to go up and tell you, I'm going to sign a linebacker in free agency and I'm going to draft a cornerback in the first round. I mean, that's just not how it works. So, but it'll be interesting. And hopefully the guys who are out there can get some interesting nuggets behind the scenes.
Now, Nick Sirianni does an off-the-record session on a fairly regular basis. Howie doesn't do that very often, does he? Is this one of the times here when you might be able to get Howie to give you something while not for attribution?
Howie does it every once in a while, but yeah, Nick does it basically once a week during the season. And he's the head coach, so it's there's more opportunity. That's why I always say, for people say, you got to ask, when Howie's there and they do these dual press conferences, you'll notice Howie gets more questions than Nick, because we get to talk to Nick all the time. And we don't get as much access, but occasionally Howie will do something behind the scenes, but it's not common as it is with Nick.
Here's the question that, again, not sure that it will be answered, but it has to be asked. I have complete faith in those reporters that are out there are going to have their chance. it's the first time Howie's been able to be asked any question since the information that Hassan Reddick was granted permission to go out and seek a trade. We found out afterwards, kind of emphatically from Hassan Reddick, look, I didn't ask for a trade. They granted me permission. It wasn't me going in and saying, hey, if you're not going to pay me, trade me. So he wanted to set the record straight. So it was an Eagle-initiated process that they said, well, we can't come to an agreement on a contract extension, your value on the open market. Well, hit the open market and see what other teams say, and then we'll come back and see where we're at. That's what I'm reading of the situation right now, but no one has said that either. So will Howie Roseman set the record straight and say, yes, while in negotiations with Hassan, we thought it would be best to let an objective third party from outside kind of have a feeler at the table to be able to give us both some guidance as to what it would be like on the open market. It's a legit strategy. Eagles have used it before. Other teams have used it too. Will we get a direct, yeah, that was our idea comment from Howie Roseman today?
No, I don't think it'll be direct, other than, he'll probably confirm he'll definitely confirm they requested, they gave him permission to seek a trade. He'll definitely confirm that. I do not think he will say, in the way you framed it, that, we think it's a good idea to let another team set the market for us, even though that's what they're doing. I don't think they like that framework of it. So he'll kind of dance around that aspect, but that's exactly what they're doing. But you never want to admit, hey, let's let somebody else negotiate our contracts for us.
What other, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, what other framework is there? If Hassan's on record and saying, hey, I didn't ask for a trade, well, then it had to be the Eagles saying, we're granting you permission. We're granting you permission for something you didn't request. How else could one interpret
it doesn't. Again,
idea?
from the Eagles' perspective, you don't want it framed, and some people will frame it as letting somebody else negotiate for them. And then, from the player's perspective, also, you don't want to throw the player under the bus saying, we don't think he's as valuable as he think he is, because that's what you're doing. And that's essentially what you're saying. And you don't want to go out in public and say, guess what? He wants too much money. And, you're trying to get something done. Or, in the worst case scenario, it's, hey, we want to get rid of him. So you don't want to say that either, because you want to build up as much trade value as humanly possible. So I don't think it serves any purposes to do it like that, but it's pretty evident just by, and they've done it in the past, as you said, and they'll let it stand on that. You make your assumptions, and your assumptions are correct, but it doesn't serve any of his purposes to go out there and say, oh, we don't think Hassan Reddick is as valuable as he thinks he is. No. And by the way, that was before the salary cap went up pretty significantly. So, and I don't know how many people expected that. I know Over the Cap originally had that expectation, but they kind of scaled back on it. And they walked it back, and then it turned out to be true. And they kind of said, damn, we should have kept it up there. So I do think even people in the league were surprised how much it went up. And that complicates things further, although it gives you more money as well. But everything is in budget. It's about a whole picture, not about one player.
Right. And that was something that I tweeted last week when I got the cap number and how much it went up. And you're right. You mentioned Over the Cap, other places with speculating. Nobody had a decide it went up. They all said it was going to increase. They were in the neighborhood. Most were 4, 5, 6 million short of what they actually set the cap at. And you are 100% right. Does it give the Eagles more flexibility? Sure does. But guess what? Gives 31 other teams more flexibility to do things. So it's kind of a net zero the ones who benefit from it are guys like, oh, I don't know, Hassan Reddick. I tweeted this as soon as I saw the increase. I said, write it down. Hassan Reddick is going to get average annual value $25 million this year. The top guys on the defensive edge, save Nick Bosa, who reset the market over the top at 30 plus. The other guys are all in that 25, 26 range, 24, 25, 26. And Hassan Reddick is one of the top 5 edge pass rushers in the NFL. So if he's keeping up with those who are getting paid a specific number in the league, and the cap has gone up to give teams more flexibility, that's what he's going to get. If the Eagles
it's a possibility now, no question about it. I mean, there's certain teams, Tennessee, Chicago, Patriots, Commanders, Colts, all have over 70 million under the cap. They got to spend it somewhere. I mean, they got to spend it somewhere. And yeah, it's a possibility now. And if it does go that high, then there's a real chance that he's not going to be back. So, I think it complicated things more than cleared them up. It's definitely good for Hassan Reddick's bottom line, though.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
And unless he is going to outrate, we got no idea. We're not flies on the wall when they've had their negotiating sessions, and maybe Hassan and his side said, we're every bit the player that Bosa is, and we want to get pull on to a same level. Well, that would be a little outrageous, a little ridiculous, setting the bar too high. But if he's at 25 million, John, is that him overreaching in your estimate? Not Eagles' estimation. So. John McMullen's estimation is 25 an outrageous ask.
Not at all.
No,
not at all. Yeah, I mean, I'm always an advocate of the players to get what you can when you can, because nobody cares from the other perspective. That's what I said. When Hassan overachieved, outperformed his contract, whatever you want to say, he certainly did. Came on a pretty much bargain. I'm not going to say bargain basement. He was paid significantly, but for the production he puts up at a position the NFL always pays, pass rusher, whatever you want to call it, edge rusher, Sam linebacker, whatever label you want to put on it, the guy rushes the passer. That's a position the NFL pays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd ask for 25 million. I might ask for 30 million. And that's why we are where we are, because that's a problem for both sides. One side is right to ask for it, and one side's probably right to pump the brakes and say, well, let's see what else is out there, what we can do. Can we build a different way? Can we do things? Because they got to build a whole defense, not just get a pass rusher.
And, oh, by the way, you got to keep it in the focus of the Philadelphia Eagles, because he's out there selling himself to every team, and somebody's going to offer him what he wants, and that team would put in a fair offer. And you and I discussed this earlier when the story broke. It's the going rate is probably a second-round pick for a guy who's a top defensive edge guy, but has years attached to him, and Hassan's age 30. We've had a couple of trades like this within the last 12 to 24 months, and it's basically been a second-round pick. You can hope for or ask for a high second-round pick. Depends on the team you're trading him to, because the draft order is set. You'd like to get a top second-round pick. You might have to settle for a second-round pick. If you get a late second-round pick, you might get a sweetener on the back end, the day 3 pick added to it. That's a going rate. And if Howie's going to just, I have to have a 1, you got to get a 1, you got to give me multiple picks. Well, that means I don't want to really trade Hassan Reddick. Then you have an issue. Because if Hassan goes out and finds a team that is willing to go 25 plus per year, and oh, by the way, they make by industry standards, as judged by Jody McDonald and John McMullen, who are we? But I have 100% confidence saying that's the going rate, is a second-round draft pick. If the Eagles turn that down, if they're offered that and they turn that down, now you got yourself an unhappy player. And Hassan's been a good dude, and I think that he has been a leader on this football team How bad could it get if Hassan Reddick is forced to come back and play under the last year of his contract here in Philadelphia?
I think he's a pro. I think he did it last year. But it wouldn't be great. And that's part of the reason why the Eagles did what they did and granted and gave him permission to seek a trade, because they don't want somebody who's upset. So they wanted him to go out there and test this market, and hopefully come to a more agreeable conclusion. And that's still a possibility. We'll see how it shakes out, but I think it complicates it because of the spike in the salary cap, and we'll see if that's the case. But I think the Eagles were hopeful of keeping it around 20, and I don't know if that's possible now. So, if the ball's in their court and it becomes too expensive, I think it becomes even more interesting because, again, the combine is going on, and they got a bunch of different avenues, whether it's the draft, free agency, trades. Howie's very aggressive, but they got to build this defense back up. I mean, they got to build this whole defense back up, essentially. They got some good players up front still, even though they underachieved. But everywhere else, you got some serious decisions to make in the back 70. You got serious questions to make at cornerback, linebacker, safety. The whole thing. It's, you got to strip it down and build it back up to a certain degree. And they got a bunch of different avenues, and they've got to fit it all together. So it isn't just about one player.
And one player I will ask, our first guest, Les Bowen's going to join us coming up in a couple of minutes. If the Hassan thing does come apart and the Eagles decide his market is too high, we can't afford to pay that, or they think that the rest of the league, or specifically the team that would be willing to pay proper in return to trade for him, now all of a sudden they got issues at the end. Josh Sweat coming off a less than stellar year. Nolan Smith, that's who I want to ask Les Bowen about. He got a chance last year. He, unlike Nakobe Dean, who almost never saw the field in his rookie season, we had no idea what kind of player Nakobe was. And then they hand him a job in year 2, and he goes ahead and gets hurt. You got a chance to see the 30th pick in the draft last year, and he did next to nothing. How much can they count on him coming into the season? It's got to be at least some. We'll get Les Bowen's take on that. We'll give you our take. We're here for you for the next hour and change on Birds 365. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Appreciate you streaming with us here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Combine Tuesday here on Birds 365. Mac, and our buddy Les Bowen. If you're looking for Les's insights above and beyond what he gives you here when he joins us on Birds 365, you can get him at his website, lesbowensjawn.com. Les Bowen, are you okay with the fact that you're not going to the combine, relieved at the fact you're not going to the combine, or kind of antsy with the fact that you're not going to the combine to be able to ask Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman questions today?
Well, see, that's the thing, Jody, that today I would love to be there because, talking to, getting to ask questions of Nick and Howie in the off season is a precious opportunity. You don't get much of that. The rest of it I could kind of do without. I don't get excited about guys 40 times.
Yeah.
I don't
medical
care.
testing, which is very important.
Huge.
Yeah.
If you ever look at the benchmarks, like the guys that really blow away drills in the combine, a lot of times they're guys that didn't turn out to be great players. Like Tavon Austin ran a great 40. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reason you go is to talk to people. And, that's one of the few things the NFL hasn't screwed up yet in terms of media access. Although some teams are trying to do that.
Yes.
Some teams the coaches are staying home.
Oh, yeah.
Because they can get more done at the facility. What the hell are they doing at the facility? It's February. The draft and free agency.
It's clearly less. It's clearly about not having the talk, I think.
Yeah.
There's 12 coaches who weren't on the schedule. 12. And there were 6 GMs who weren't on the schedule. Now, it's always subject to change. I haven't checked it in recent days if anybody was a last-minute addition, but I'm pretty sure those 12 coaches aren't showing up.
So you have the interviews with the prospects there. And, of course, you can watch a taped interview, but you're not asking any questions in that setting. You can, the agents for the pending free agents are all there. And this is where
that's the more important part. Yeah.
This is where a lot of these deals get done is in Indianapolis 2 weeks before free agency.
Yes.
When you're legally not allowed to talk to these guys. So if you're not involved in that, I just don't. It's bizarre to me to go to that length that you have to, like, you have a game next week that you have to be at the facility. That's just one of the strangest things I've ever heard.
Yeah, I always get a kick. Last year it was TJ Edwards. What was it? 13 minutes after legal tampering begun, which is an oxymoron, obviously. He's got a deal done with Chicago. Magically, they just picked up the phone and got a deal done in 13 minutes. That to me is the biggest part of it. You got to lay the foundation for these legal negotiation. That's what it really is, period. That's where you lay the foundation. So for a GM not to be there, that to me is a bigger deal than the coaches.
Oh, yeah.
The coaches is bad enough, but for a GM not to be there, it's absurd. And things are changing in the NFL, no question about it. But if you were there, Les Bowen, and, what's the first thing you want to ask? I'll say both. Howie Roseman's going to go first, and then Nick Sirianni. Give me the first, Les Bowen. What do you want to know right off the bat?
Well, I think a lot of the questioning will involve the changes in the coaching staff, but I still want to know what the hell happened in the last 7 weeks of the season.
I think we all do. I think
It's
they
never happened before in the history of the NFL. And a 10-1 team has never finished like this in the history of the league. What is your explanation for this? And how are you going to keep it from happening again? And, you know, A.J. Brown is talking last week on the radio about players didn't execute. Well, that's an Andy Reid answer. I mean, what does that mean? Why didn't they execute? Did they just suddenly stop executing at a certain point in this season for reasons unknown to all of us? I mean, I still want to know what happened to this team, because I think until you get past that, it's really hard to project whether they're going to be a terrible team or a good team next season.
Here's a question I would ask, and again, half of these questions we know we're not going to get an answer, and/or they're going to be, as you just described them, Andy Reid-like answers, answering without answering. How did the process go to decide to fire the two?
Yeah.
That's a Howie question more than a Nick question, because Nick was just informed of it and he accepted it, but I don't think it was his call. He supposedly set the wheels in motion by pushing Desai upstairs. But what do you think Howie's answer? How do you think he'll dance around? Yeah, Jeffrey and I sat down and we decided we need to coordinate.
Yeah.
Other than
that'll be, maybe we'll get, as we watched the final weeks play out, it was evident that, things weren't being communicated properly. I don't know. I mean, you don't trash coaches after they leave you traditionally in the NFL.
You just trash them behind the scenes.
Right. So I don't know what they'll say exactly, but we should all be there. These would be great questions. But Jody that's a very good question. How did they come to this decision that this was what they needed to do? You have, I think Mike Sealski pointed out yesterday in his column, again, going back to A.J. Brown, A.J. was claiming it wasn't the coaches. So, somebody Mike would have loved to have asked A.J., as I would have, okay, how come they fired them then? If it didn't have anything to do with the coaches.
By the way, Les, there's a lot of offensive coaches that were not fired. So
yeah.
I don't know about you, but when this first came down, I assumed, and on the defensive side, and first of all, I think everybody's on board with Vic Fangio. I think Nick's happy with it. I think Howie's happy with it. I think Jeffrey's happy with it. So I put Vic off to the side. That's who they wanted originally, and they finally got him. So I put him off to the side. But the offense is a little bit more interesting to me, because that's Nick Sirianni's ballywick. Yeah. That's his offense. As long as I'm going to be here, it's going to be my offense, Les, until Jeffrey Lurie tells me it's not going to be my offense. But guess what? The running back coach is still there.
Mm-hmm.
The offensive line coach, rightfully, is still there. The tight ends coach is still there. The wide receivers coach is still there. Everybody's still there.
With the offensive guru or whatever he is,
the overseer of the offense is still there.
Yeah.
So the only people gone are Brian Johnson, the play caller, and Alex Tanney, the quarterbacks coach, who both landed on their feet. Brian in Washington, Alex with Shane Steichen in Indy. But it seems to me they say the vast majority of coaches on the offense are doing a really good job.
Yeah.
And you could argue that they were top 10 in every meaningful category.
Yeah.
If you kind of look at avoid that 1-6 finish, but overall they were top 10. So what does that mean when you say all these guys are doing a great job? Let's bring them back, but let's bring in Kellen Moore.
Well, two things. One is that as fans and media speculated all season, you're saying that a big problem was the play calling, the selection of what you were going to do, rather than the preparation of the players, the coaching of the players during the week. The other thing is you're bringing in Kellen Moore. It's supposedly going to be his offense, and he's getting his quarterbacks, his
You got two guys. You got a quarterbacks coach, Doug Nussmeier, and an analytics guy.
Right.
So you got to bring in two guys.
It's not like you're just sort of pasting him into Sirianniville the way that the 49ers tried to put Steve Wilks into the defensive coordinator position, and
go be D'Amico Ryans.
Yeah, go be D'Amico Ryans. Yeah, they're not quite doing that, but is it really going to be Kellen Moore's offense with all of Nick's assistants?
That was my question.
It's going to be something to watch.
Yeah.
It really is. It's going to be it's going to be a story that will be written many, many, many times, I think, over the offseason and training camp and preseason and early season, as things work out or don't work out. It's, how different is the offense going to be? I don't know.
And it's a key question for the Eagles next year, and we'll start analyzing it in first practice, certainly first preseason game, and then all importantly when the regular season starts. Is it Kellen Moore's offense, or is it Kellen Moore trying to run Nick Sirianni's offense? John was saying yesterday, as by judging the staff, sounds like Nick has still got his swag, that it's still going to be a heavy Nick Sirianni offense because they didn't change out the coaches. But I did the research. When Kellen Moore moved from the Cowboys to the Chargers, you know how many coaches he brought with him from Dallas? One, Doug Nussmeier. All the other coaches on the Chargers offensive staff last year were retained, were there the year before, kind of like the Eagles right here, right now. They're keeping.
Was that an overwhelming success?
No, and Herbert got hurt at the end of the year. That kind of throws it out of whack. I wouldn't call it a success, but I wouldn't call it a failure either.
Right.
In hiring Kellen Moore, you're hiring the 5 years they put in, the 4 in Dallas and the 1 in Los Angeles, and the 1 in Los Angeles is not the highlight year. But some coaches are like that. I said this to John yesterday. When Doug Peterson got hired to be the Eagles coach, they asked him about his coaching staff, and he said, "Yeah, whatever you want, Howie."
Yeah, he didn't.
I'm good. You're making me the head coach. I'll take whoever you got
those
for
kind
me.
of connections in the NFL. He hadn't really been in the NFL as a coach that. As a higher level coach for very long.
And he crazily stuck with Andy Reid. I always thought that was the dumbest explanation to me, Les, from this perspective. When people would talk about Doug Peterson, he hasn't had enough jobs. He hasn't been in enough places. What do you want him to be? With an unsuccessful coach so he can be fired, so he can go meet a bunch of people? It never made any sense to me from a logical perspective. If you want to be a head coach in this league, stick by Andy Reid, unless you're Eric Bieniemy, and there's some other issues that people fail to acknowledge there. But most people get head coaching jobs. So it would have been crazy. Hey, Andy, I got to go get more experience. I'm going to leave maybe the best coach of the generation. Never made any sense to me. But to Jody's point, it's a different situation. Kellen Moore got scapegoated in Dallas, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not his fault. In this situation, it was phrased that Nick had to get fresh ideas, new ideas. You saw it on the defensive side with Vic Fangio, who, Vic was allowed essentially to bring in a bunch of different guys. Offensively, that's what I thought was going to happen, to get the fresh ideas, not the staleness.
Yeah.
That, let's be honest, well, whatever you want to put on, some of those guys have to do with the staleness. I thought the assumption was we got to bring in a bunch of new fresh faces. And it turned out to be the exact opposite. It surprised me, to be honest. That's so many.
A little bit. If you go one by one on those guys.
Stoutland didn't surprise
Aaron
me.
Moorhead's the only guy there that I really thought was gone. I mean, I don't know whether the tight ends coach did a good job or not. I mean, who the hell knows?
That's exactly
the running back coach. The running backs were fine. Swift had a wonderful year. I didn't see any. They weren't running in the wrong direction. They couldn't pick up the blitz real great, but
nobody can.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like a giant ticking time bomb or anything, but I I did think he'd get a wide receiver.
Well, it's not. I would say this, Les. I don't think any of them did a bad job. It's not like I'm saying they should. I don't think Brian Johnson should have been fired.
Okay.
I think you have to grow, and Michael Clay is evidence of that. I think young coaches have to grow in a position, and if you're hiring young coaches and you don't expect growing pains, that's on you, because it's going to happen. But from the perspective, so I think, people did solid jobs, but I look at the defensive side, like DJ Elliott. Nobody knows DJ Elliott. He was the linebackers coach. I don't know if he did a good job, bad job. People say they didn't have good linebackers. Is that DJ Elliott's fault? I mean, that poor guy, he had to they got Zach Cunningham in August.
Right.
They got Shaq Leonard, in the season. Oh, go get him ready. Go get him ready to play at a high level. Who had a tougher job than DJ Elliott?
And you had other guys like Morrow in and out with injury. And it was chaos. And, the thing you had with the defense was, as one of the analysts said, it looked like they were playing 3 different schemes at the different levels of the defense.
True. That's true.
That you have to lay on Desai, I guess, but it also had to do with the chaotic personnel situation. So I don't know, but it's there's a lot. I was thinking also while we were talking here, one of the things, if I were in Indianapolis, that I'd be looking to do would be to bump into Brian Johnson or Alex Tanner.
Oh yeah.
If they are there,
or Sean Desai
wearing their new warm-ups.
No,
Sean Desai's not there.
Got no chance.
Yeah,
he's on the Rams.
The
Rams don't even acknowledge the combine, let alone show up in it. Let alone a guy who got hired 2 days ago.
He's on the beach.
He's got no chance to be there. You can look for Sean Desai. Where's Waldo would be easier to find than Sean Desai.
Well, I'd be more interested really in Johnson and Tanny, because the offense is the real problem to figure out, I think. With the defense and what happened with Desai, I mean, I think we kind of understand. The defense was horrible, and with the offense, I don't understand at all what happened. And I would love to delve into that more, but I'm not there, so maybe somebody will bump into him. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, if go ahead, Jody.
I'll get you to speculate a little bit here, Les, because it's something we'll probably never be told directly on or off the record on this one, John. How much say is Fangio going to have in player personnel? Starts today. Howie season officially starts today with guys working out at the combine. We got to wait till the new year starts before free agency. They're all doing their evaluations, come up with reports and game plans and everything else. How much is Desai really got gravitas to say, here's a player I need for my defense? Here, Howie, you got to go beyond what you think you spend for this guy. This is the spot that we have to put most of our efforts into. How much are they going to let Desai as a defensive coordinator?
Fangio.
What I say, Desai, excuse me, Fangio, thank you. Be a real loud voice in the room about the moves they're going to make to upgrade the defense.
Well, I would hope that they're going to give him a big voice, as long as he's not, trading away Jalen Carter or something. You don't bring him in and then say, okay, you don't think you have the right people here, but go ahead and run your defense anyway. I would think he'd have a lot to say. And but that's one of the things that, we haven't laid eyes on Vic Fangio as an Eagle yet, or talked to him or anything like that. So, we don't really know. I guess that's one of the things Howie will be asked today.
Yeah.
Perhaps
should be.
Here's my concern, because we've seen this scheme for 3 years now, Les, at different levels. Really good in year 2, second in the NFL, really bad in year 3. But the same scheme in essence, different guys running it.
Right.
And we're going to have the same scheme again. And I think it's going to be better taught. And I think the players are going to be better prepared, because it's a big scheme and it's not some disciple trying to copy it. I think that's always the best case scenario. But I got problems with this scheme.
Yeah.
And a lot of people look at free agents, understandably so, and they look at the draft and they say, I want this guy and I want that guy. We just had Jalen Ramsey, pretty good cornerback. You should hear Nick Sirianni rave about Jalen Ramsey. Talking about Xavier Howard, Miami Dolphins, two of the best press corners in the NFL over the past number of years. They didn't like it. Jalen's out there taking shots. I'll never forgive that guy for how he used us.
Yeah.
I saw somebody say Kyle Duggar is a free agent who's sort of that modern hybrid linebacker safety. They don't use that. They want coverage safeties. So if you're looking at L'Jarius Sneed, what good is a press corner? If you're going to play quarters and cover 2 and cover 6, what good does that do you? Why
actually Rasul Douglas is the kind of guy that
yes. Why are you spending $20 million on a press corner?
Yeah.
So I think people buyer beware on some of these big names.
That's a really good point. But it's free agency is going to be fascinating because I was talking to Zach Berman last week, and he was anticipating that all of the top edge rushers would be franchised.
Yeah.
Turns out none of them apparently are going to be franchised from what I'm reading.
I don't know yet. You could try.
I read that, the Carolina is not expected to franchise Brian Burns, and Jacksonville is not expected to franchise Josh Allen, and the Jets are not expected to franchise Bryce Huff. I don't know why.
The Jets. I expected Allen and Burns to get franchised, and there's still time. I think the deadline is.
It could happen. But I'm reading from people that supposedly know these things that it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So would you rather pay one of those guys than Hassan Reddick? I don't know.
They're going to get more.
Yeah, they are. Oh, they should. I mean, that's the crux of the argument with Hassan Reddick. Is he one of those guys?
Yeah.
He was for 1 year.
And
with Hassan Reddick, I think, if you think about his first year here, that's when the Eagles were dominating. They were ahead.
Yeah.
He's great when you're winning by 10 points in the fourth quarter and he's got his ears pinned back. He's phenomenal. If you're in a tight game and everything's still on the table, not as good.
Run at him.
Yeah, exactly. The whole offense, not as good. So I think he's great, but you got to have him in the right position. And he's probably not the most well-rounded edge rusher.
No. And neither is Sweat. And can you have those two guys as your dominant, as your guys that get most of the snaps on the edge? I mean, neither one of them can set an edge. Sweat's a guy, what you just said about Reddick applies to Sweat in spades. If you line Sweat up against a really good offensive tackle, you're never going to hear from him again. He feasts on bad players mostly. Reddick is a little different. I think Reddick has a little more explosiveness than Sweat has. But,
yeah. By the way, Vic's going to drop Reddick more than JG, maybe even more than Sean Desai, maybe even more than Matt Patricia if he's here. Josh Sweat as well.
We'll see about that. And John will tell you, I chastised Howie Roseman for not going out and getting Rasul Douglas at the trade deadline this year. I thought he'd be a perfect fit for the Eagles. He was available. Bradbury was struggling. I thought he'd come in. Yeah. He can play the slot. He's a versatile guy who can play inside and outside. He's probably better outside than he is in the slot, but this was before Maddox came back. I thought Howie dropped the ball when they didn't get Rasul Douglas, and I think he'd be a fit in the Fangio defense this year with Vic running it. So you and I saw that one the same. Here's my issue with the two Eagle edge guys who had drop-off years this year. You think it had anything to do with TJ Edwards not being behind him? That they kind of stuck out a little bit more because you didn't have a tackling machine at linebacker playing behind them like you did the year before when TJ Edwards was in there? I'll suggest that that's part of the problem, that I'm not going to drop it all in their two laps and go, oh, my God, they both fell. Why we're getting on Bradbury's case because he had a bad year and looked bad. Well, so did the two defensive ends. Yeah, there's the relationship between the linebackers and the defensive end against the run, and the Eagles just didn't do enough to get the linebacker position up to snuff.
Right.
So that's on
when
them.
The defensive tackles were really tearing it up there for a while. I thought the edge rushers looked fine. You know, they were getting sacks once Hassan Reddick got the cast off his hand and all that. I thought everything was just Jim Dandy with the defensive line for a very limited time. And then when the defensive tackles dropped off, the whole thing just disintegrated. But you're right; they did not have the linebackers plug in the gaps, and it was ugly.
You know, I want to rewind to Rasul because I want to connect it to DeAndre Swift, and Les was there. So one thing I say about Rasul, and I think a lot of people never really think about, is that I don't know if you remember when Rasul first got here as a 3rd round pick last year. He was one of the nicest kids. He just was so engaging.
Great backstory.
So tremendous.
Yeah.
And but when he left, he was miserable. I mean, he did not want to be here. Yeah. And you know, certain things, and that's why I bring it up. And I'm not saying DeAndre Swift is miserable, but I don't think he was happy in this particular offense because I think he thinks he could be utilized more in the passing game, and the Eagles haven't done that. Maybe Kellen Moore can do that. I don't know. But the point is, I think the Eagles have to sell it to DeAndre Swift. However, you were talking about the edge rushers. None of the running backs are getting franchised again. So Saquon's going to be out there. Josh Jacobs is going to be out there. Derrick Henry's going to be out there. Anybody else I'm missing, Jody? All these big name backs are going to be out there that are going to generate more money than DeAndre Swift. In theory, that
DeAndre could end up back here. I see what you're getting to.
In theory, but does he want to be back here?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. I mean, it's his hometown, and I think he likes that part of it. You know, what are going to be the changes? How is the offense going to be different? It's a new coordinator. I'm sure he would like to know what Kellen Moore's thoughts are with that. That's a very good point. And the whole running back thing is funny to me because in Giants world, I'm sure Jody's a little plugged into this, being a New York guy. In Giants world, you know, what's going to happen with Saquon Barkley is like the key to their season. It is.
That's a bad position to be in.
He's getting toward the end, running back, you know, whether he's with the Giants or not isn't going to affect their wins and losses very much at all. You know, it's.
Yeah, I disagree with you on that one. I do agree that it's a pretty big deal for them. And
they can find another running back who can
find another running back
yards a carry or whatever.
I don't want to.
Isn't that easier said than done? Just go find a running back.
It is.
Not really.
I don't want to build on a running back. I think they tried to build on a running back. Right. It hasn't worked. It just doesn't work. It's nice to have one. You need one in the playoffs.
And that McCaffrey guy did a pretty good job uplifting the 49ers, I'd say.
And
well, that's the guy, but he's not strictly a running back. And, you know, if he were available, he'd be worth almost anything. But, you know, that's the only guy in the league that.
But, really, you know, even Christian McCaffrey, you have to be in the right spot. Right. Christian McCaffrey was in Carolina. He didn't mean anything. They're still great player, best player. I mean, they're not ready. It's great to have a great running back when you have a great roster and a great team. It's great, but you saw it in San Francisco. But when you have a bad team and a bad roster and you're trying to build on a running back, the Giants have already been down that road. Turn the page. Turn the page and start building the right way, I would argue, with the Giants.
And with the, as you mentioned, 3 guys, top running backs in the league who aren't going to be franchised this year. It doesn't really change DeAndre Swift and or any other running back's position because of those 3 teams. Who's the guy who they're just going to elevate and make their number 1 back? Tennessee, I don't think so. Raiders, I don't think so. Giants, I don't think so. None of them have the great young back that was being held back behind the veteran 1,000-yard rusher. So guess what? The Giants, the Titans, and the Raiders are just added to the list of teams that are going to be in the mix.
You think you're going to just swap running backs all around? Yeah, I guess that's possible. I think you can draft one in the 2nd round, you know, and be just fine. But
if you're Kansas City, you can draft one in the 7th round.
yes, you can. Yeah, one from Vineland. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't count on that though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I expect the Eagles' leading rusher to be TBD, Lesbo, and to be determined. And I think the most likely scenario is it's going to be a draft pick and probably a day 2, maybe that 3rd round pick, that 3rd round compensatory pick. But you got to get it right. You got to evaluate correctly.
Right.
And that's easier said than done. But yeah, I don't think the Eagles want to pay that position.
No, they definitely don't. Yeah. And I'm kind of with them on that,
Fresh ideas, though. Does that change? Does that include Howie Roseman? Did they come off last season, Les, and say, all right, we got to pay a little bit more attention. DeAndre played well, so I don't think it's about running back, but certainly linebacker.
Linebacker and safety. Yeah. I think the league has changed. A lot of their ideas are the same, Joe Banner, Andy Reid ideas from 15 years ago about what defenses, what you prioritize in a defense. Problem is offenses have changed so much, and the middle of the field is so much of a bigger deal now than it was 15 years ago. I think Andy has certainly made that change in Kansas City, but
yeah,
I don't think Howie has. I think they do need to. I've been very critical of the way they handle linebacker. I don't think you need to draft a linebacker in the 1st round, although drafting 22nd, it wouldn't, there's probably a linebacker that could be 22nd overall. I don't know, but
not this
you
year.
Need to find good ones.
Years.
You can't just, the way Howie has approached this for several years now is kind of whatever shows up. If somebody gets rid of a safety or a linebacker and you're in training camp and you pounce, but otherwise you're just throwing out there whatever you found in unrestricted, undrafted free agency. And, some years you've got TJ Edwards and some years you've got Alex Singleton and some years,
yeah. Well, I was looking, it's funny. I was doing a sort of fits miss thing for SI about free agency. And I was looking at the linebackers and I'm saying to myself, all right, what's an Eagles linebacker? And I saw Tyrell Dodson from Buffalo, who played because Matt Milano got hurt. And he played really well. But he's undersized, he's fast, he's quick. He'll probably get a 1-year, 2-year deal. Very cost effective. I said, that's an Eagles linebacker right there.
Yeah. Could be. Yeah.
And I don't know if they go above that. And I go back and now, supposedly they were in on Drew Tranquil last year and he ended up winning Super Bowl with Kansas City. He could have helped, but I don't think he's a dominant player.
No.
A lot of people look at Josie Jewell because he worked with Vic Fangio in Denver. A lot of people look at the kid in Tennessee, Al Shire, because he worked with the new linebackers coach. But I think he'll be too expensive. They got to do something, though. And
they also need to address it again in the draft. The last real draft pick they used there was Davion Taylor. He's gone.
Davion.
So, that's part of the problem is, that was their 3rd round.
Nakobe, so
right. Other than Nakobe.
They have to get it right.
They have to, Nakobe has to be, I think we talked about this previously, but when Howie gave his one postseason press conference before this, I was a little bit surprised at the way he came down to, Nakobe Dean waving the Nakobe Dean flag.
Oh, yeah.
Clearly they expect, they're going to have a leadership turnover on defense with the most prominent leaders either not being back next year or taking maybe in Brandon Graham's case, a ceremonial role almost. They're pinning a lot on Nakobe Dean. And I know he's been hurt, but when he hasn't been hurt,
I haven't seen much.
Yeah,
not a big sample size.
He hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been good.
No. Just kind of.
There's a lot pending there, that's for sure. And can he be healthy? Which has been my question. If you've seen the guy, he wouldn't be a real big safety, I don't think.
And if you don't think it was planned when Howie Roseman had his only speaking engagement since the season ended, that he specifically dropped Nakobe's name. He almost pulled a Sirianni. John and I have fun with this. Just every once in a while, Sirianni will go to a player. Won't necessarily be asked about a player. He'll be asked about something else. And he'll weave the conversation over to sing the praises of a player. Yeah.
Unprompted. Yeah. The unprompted. Trey Sermon just bring Trey out of
nowhere. Quez Watkins out of nowhere. How he kind of did that with Nakobe and Zach Cunningham. He kind of went over the top, and Zach had a really good year for him.
Yeah.
And okay,
I didn't get that.
He didn't light the scoreboard up. Let's not overstate it here. No. But he made Zach Cunningham sound like, wow, he's a key contributor for us, and we'd be lucky to have him back. So how he's setting the table for, don't get your expectations up too high about me being overly.
That's why I said Tyrell Dotson, baby. 1 year, $5 million. Go get him.
But they do have some cap space now, especially with the cap going up so much.
Yeah.
And I think there's some easy ways for them to create even more space, by redoing some deals. It's not a matter of not having money. If they don't spend the money, it'll be because they don't like what's out there at the price. I don't think it's big. They always spend money. I mean, in terms of actual cash spent, they're always at the top of the league. But if they don't come away with top echelon free agents, it'll be because they don't like them, I guess. I don't know.
All right, let me ask each of you guys this question because you've got a good grasp on it as Eagle Beat guys. Trying to judge how much the powers that be, that would be Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, judge the criticism they may be getting from both the media and Eagle Nation fans and guys who cover the team. This is one that could come back to bite him in the butt, because I think Jeremiah Trotter is going to be available in the second round. Not going in the first, unless you said, maybe there'd be somebody in first. There's no linebacker that deserves to go in the first 22 picks in the draft this year. My evaluation, we'll see if it actually happens. Trotter's not going in the first. He's going to be available for them at least for their first second-round pick and maybe both of their second-round picks. If they pass on him twice and then he goes somewhere else and becomes a big-time linebacker, how much critique are they in for? Will they factor that in at all in their evaluation of Jeremiah Trotter Jr.?
I would not if it were me. I mean, I don't think that's something that you really worry about in terms of your evaluation of a player. Either he's somebody you want at that spot, or he isn't. Whether people are going to criticize you or not is, you can't be worried about that. I'm a little bit leery of Jeremiah Trotter Jr. in that there'd be so much pressure on him here to live up to that name. He's not 260 pounds like his dad was.
No.
The game has changed dramatically. Jeremiah Trotter couldn't cover me, in his prime. I mean, but he didn't need to. It was a different game. He was drafted in the 1990s.
No, you can't do business like that. To answer Jody's question, you can't do business. I joked, if you left it up to the fans, they draft Jeremiah Trotter Jr., they'd sign John Runyon Jr., they'd trade for Asante Samuel Jr.
Yeah.
You can't do business that way.
Right.
If you like the player, you draft him. We did our conference call with Daniel Jeremiah. He's got him as a third-round pick.
Yeah.
If the Eagles are in the same boat, you start thinking about him there. Maybe they like him. Maybe they don't like him. Maybe they like another linebacker better. But, you got to stick true to your evaluation and not get all warm in the cockles of your heart because the name says Trotter. And you bring up a good point, Les. Maybe there'd be more pressure on him in Philadelphia than anywhere else to live up to his father's reputation. So I agree with you there. Last one for me, at Les Bowen, the great Les Bowen, I will say. Les Bowen's Sean, if you want to check out, I'm sure he'll be writing something about the combine. Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman speak today.
Yes.
Your old buddy Marcus Hayes wrote a column this morning. I had to ask.
He loved the hand grenade in there.
Yeah, throwing a little bit, throwing a log on the fire. Love Marcus. About Nick Sirianni treating people differently. Jalen,
was he talking about Nick, or is he talking about the other coaches, or the coaches?
No, he's talking about Nick and the coaching staff. So both.
Yeah.
Starting with Jalen and AJ. I always think of a Jimmy Johnson quote. It was a great quote to me. And Jimmy said basically to his players, I'll treat you all fairly, but I'm not treating you all the same. Saying, look, Emmitt Smith is Emmitt Smith.
Right.
He's got, doesn't everybody do that?
Yeah.
Like Jalen Hurts is the quarterback. AJ Brown's the star.
And it kind of struck me as these guys that said this to Marcus after the Arizona game, and then whenever he talked to the second guy, this is what happens when you lose.
Yes. Yes.
It wouldn't be I'm sure they didn't treat them any differently the year before when they went to the Super Bowl. This is the kind of thing people notice when things aren't going well. Could they have handled some guys better? I don't know. I mean, you have this, and it kind of runs head on into what AJ Brown said about, I was just mad that guys weren't doing their jobs. If AJ is one of the guys that was never criticized, well, first of all, what are you criticizing AJ Brown for?
Right.
Questions. What did he do?
Yeah.
Did he not block well enough? I don't know. It just seems like the kind of stuff that comes out when teams go bad. And that's one of the things they have to address. I'm not minimizing it in the sense that they have to get this thing back together and get these guys back together, pulling on the same oar. And I was surprised to see that. I sometimes have a naive view of professional sports. I think maybe I would hope that I would be smarter than to run around, saying things like that about, when it's just, there's that wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, no offense, but if you're a backup wide receiver and you're worried about the way AJ Brown is getting treated, I mean, either become AJ Brown, the same thing will happen to you in any city. That's kind of my perspective. Yes, star players get treated differently. Guess what? That's what happens in professional sports.
Right. The Jimmy Johnson quote you gave, I remember the player that begot that quote. Kervin Richards was their backup running back at the University of Pittsburgh, and he fell asleep at a team meeting. Yeah. And they said, Kervin, hey, grab your bag. See you later. Bye. Go. So Jimmy was asked, would you have done it if Emmitt nodded off? And Jimmy's response was, he's Emmitt Smith. Yeah. Of course not. Yeah. There are different, if you don't think there's a totem pole in every National Football League locker room and they're treated differently, you're kidding yourself. Yeah, I love Marcus, but I'm not sure that I buy into
Marcus is just giving you information that he was told by Kerwin. Was it Kerwin? I don't even remember who that was. Richards.
Kervin Richards.
Richards. If you think you're going to be treated the same as Emmitt Smith, I mean, there's no self-awareness there.
Wake up and smell the coffee. Yeah, that's not going to cut it. All right, Les, we've had you on for a long time. I got one more question for you. It's quasi-Eagle related. Who will have the bigger role as a NFL analyst in-game or studio booth this upcoming year? Jason Kelce or Bill Belichick?
Boy. I would probably rather listen to Kelce myself, but that's a good, I've been struck by the fact that I guess Belichick's son put it out there that he's looking to
do TV. Yeah.
And you haven't heard any network jumping in there and grabbing him.
Just like NFL teams. Yeah. Maybe he wants too much autonomy.
This is going to be fascinating to see. Kelsey's a more colorful personality and more of an everyman type. I would go with him over Belichick.
Are we going to get Kelsey news, by the way, Les? Should have asked that. I know we kept you way too long. This is when it usually happens at the Combine. The one year how we did the podcast, the 1 year Nick's talking about buying him the keg to get him to come back.
I think this has to be tough for him. Unless you win the Super Bowl, there is no good way to retire. I mean, last year, you're 3 points away from winning it all, so you convince yourself that you're going to come back and get it done this year. Then now all of a sudden you're retiring off a horrible finish. Your final memories are terrible. You're taking the uniform off for the last time after an atrocious playoff loss. There's a push to, wouldn't you like to wash that out of your mouth, and have a real, but unless you win the Super Bowl, you just kind of keep doing that year after year after year after year. I don't know. I guess he is going to retire. I don't really know, but that'll be a huge problem for the Eagles on the field. I mean, that's the next guy up is probably a decent player, Juergens, but Jason Kelsey's.
Then you can bring in John Runyon Jr. to play guard. Think of it that way. Move Cam Juergens, sign John Runyon Jr.
There you go.
Going to become a domino effect. You can replace Kelsey, but then you got to replace Juergens. How do you replace Juergens? Well, you got to replace.
Right.
That's the issue. Les, good stuff. We appreciate it. Whenever you come on, check out his website. That would be LesBowensJohn.com. When he's not here with us, you can get all the Les' insight reading them on his website. Les, thanks for doing it with us today.
Thank you, Les.
Les Bowen, former Eagle beat guy, still on top of the Eagles day in and day out, and good whenever he comes on with us. All right, Mac and Mac, quickie timeout and come back. I got one or two things I want to run by John before. Caden Steele is going to join us.
Yeah, debut, NJ.com, baby. Little colleague of Chris Franklin. What show is this? Number 7 what, Jody?
7-Eleven. We're convenience store day.
7-Eleven.
There's only going to be one 7-Eleven, John. We'll have 712 tomorrow, and at some point 1,711. There will never be another 7-Eleven show here on Birds 365.
Should get a Slurpee. Should have had Slurpees.
Slurpees for all. And Caden Steele is, we'll find out if he's the Cam Juergens of Birds 365. At some point, is he going to step in for Chris Franklin over there at NJ.com? It's nice to have depth, but
Chris has got a lot of years left, man.
You think so? You think so? I hear he's thinking about retirement. That's just the word I
He was on vacation. He's out in Indy.
He's doing the Indy thing. Hopefully he gets a good question in for Harry Roseman and or Nick Sirianni. All right, Mac and Mac coming back with more Birds 365 in just a second. Stay with us. Oh, let me tell you, Eagles fans, here's your chance to save up to 40% on your car insurance right now from one of JAKIB Sports' great partners. Here's what you need to do. Call managing partner Jim or Fran and tell them you're a friend of both JAKIB Sports and Birds 365.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Val Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac guys here on Birds 365. Appreciate you staying tuned. Caden Steele from NJ.com. Newbie. Never had him on the show before. Looking forward to talking to him coming up in just a couple of minutes. Do want to give thanks to a couple people on our stream here, John, which I'm the guy who would mention the stream guys and the like, and you guys seem to have a good enough time for yourself talking back and forth. So we don't bring up as some of the other shows here on JAKIB do, but we do appreciate you just the same. I got to give a couple thanks to those who did check in. Someone reminded me, Karina, Jody, one of these days you're going to remember that read. As we went to break, I had to go scrambling before I got it up in a cabinet over my broadcasting outlet spot and had to pull it down at the last second. You're right, Karina. I didn't remember. Got it. Grabbed it just in time. Good job by Zander throwing it up there and making me do the live read. So Karina noticed. He's someone who's paying attention. We love our streamers who pay close attention. So Karina, thanks for that. And there's one other guy I got to thank. John Bell. John comments on the stream a bunch. And the only question I would have for John is, why do you stream us? Why do you watch us? Why do you He doesn't like anything about the show. He is always critiquing you and I and our guests and our content and what the hell are we talking about. John, I got to thank you because you're basically here every day and you're always saying something negative. John's a Philadelphia guy. I guess that would not be good for AJ Brown because he thinks the media's job is to be supportive of the team. They're not supposed to question the team or critique the team. You're supposed to get out the pom-poms and lead and cheer. Well, John doesn't subscribe to that. John thinks, hey, I can critique, I can criticize anybody I want. You're right, you can, John. Not that I'm going to change anything because of your critique or your position on the show. But I just have a wonder if it's just something like this, whether you are or aren't going to pay attention to a given show in any broadcast medium. If you really don't like it, why are you listening? This harkens me back to John's explanation to me about the quarterback list that came out. And I said, how the hell do you have Jalen Hurts behind Anthony Richardson. How do you have him in the second half of the NFL's quarterbacks at number 17? And John's response was, Jody, there'll be another list along in 10 minutes. Maybe you like that one better. Don't sweat it all that much because you'll find one that you like better. I don't know what John Bell does by streaming into us every single day. He seems to dislike everything that we do.
I would say troll. Don't give the trolls air. I would say he's the one guy. I think he mentions 3-4 every day. Like, he thinks he's equipped to program the show, and he's so clueless to modern football. He's still talking about 3-4s it's a 3-4. It's a 3-4, Jody. Yeah, I would ignore people like that. That would be my recommendation.
I wanted to thank Karina for pointing out that. See, now that's a criticism I'm willing to take because I forgot to live read, and if I'm not reminded, I usually do forget it. So that's a mea culpa. That's on me. I snuck it in there. Thank you, Zander, for handling it just perfectly and me being able to scramble and find it. We'll take criticism, but every once in a while, you think we get one right. And John Bell never seems to find anything that we do right and or acceptable, which that's fine. Everybody is allowed their opinion. I'm not going to deny anybody their opinion. I would just have one question for you. Then why do you continue to watch? If you think it's as bad as you do with your commentary every single day, I'd put out, there's got to be a good cartoon on TV somewhere that you can watch that's more entertaining than Mac and Mac. But if you care about Eagle football, I have no idea. I'll ask you the question. I asked Les about the TV possibilities coming up this year. I've done a 180. I'd said all along I thought that Jason Kelce was coming back. I thought people overreacted to how he handled himself after the last game of the season when they lost, got beat by the Bucs. What's he going to do? Not hug his teammates? Because that might send the wrong message to the observing media members who are there? No, of course he's going to bro hug everybody. So I didn't necessarily believe he was going to walk away. When Jordan Mailata continued to beat the drum of, hey, he's not coming back, that started to worry me. And then when he did the Chris Long podcast of the Eagles never said we once, that really concerned me and kind of probably pushed me over the edge. It's a yay, nay thing. Is he coming back or is he not coming back? And I went from yay to nay. He has already talked to major broadcast outlets about a potential media gig last year. But Belichick's Belichick. As great as Jason Kelce is, and we have him on a pedestal here in Philadelphia that nationally just doesn't have because he played for the Eagles. You think Belichick's going to get a major TV gig? His personality doesn't seem like it, but we've had, you remember, we had
Gary Myers, man. Yeah, I always hear that about Bill. I've heard it from more than Gary. He's got a really good personality. He just doesn't show it as a coach because he didn't want to show it as a coach. Now, that would have to change on a television broadcast. I don't know if he can do that, if he can turn on a dime, but he would have to show a different side of himself. The problem is when you talk about Kelce, and obviously Kelce's, we already know his reputation, his personality. He's just a very engaging guy. He's got his own podcast. He does a tremendous job with it. Tom Brady's coming along too. So, I mean, it's a bad year to get involved. I'm sure he'll get involved in somewhere, maybe in a studio setting, I would think, more than as one of the 4 or 5 talking heads than color commentary. I would think the studio would be better for Bill, but, I'm just spitballing. But, yeah, you're coming in. If Jason does retire, and I expect him to retire, Tom Brady's coming in as well. Tom's phenomenal, by the way.
You think he's going to be really good?
I don't know because, I mean, Greg Olson is tremendous. I didn't see that coming. So it's not like it's different roles. Like, but when he's on with, and I brought up that Steve Young podcast, when he was talking about modern quarterback play, he boiled something down that I've been trying to explain for 3 years in basically 5 minutes. Unbelievable as far as, because he might be the best to ever do it. So he can explain it better than anybody else. Is that going to translate? It's a little bit different, but I know he's got something to offer. He's going to be better than Greg Olson. I don't know. People thought Tony Romo was great right up until they thought he stunk. So, you mentioned a troll on our streams. There's haters all over the place.
Oh,
it all depends.
Phil
And
Simms.
people will hate, Cowboys fans will hate Jason Kelce, as engaging in personality as he is, just the way it is.
I was a Phil Simms guy. I thought that Simms was well above average as a football color commentator, and he was Nance's sidekick for the #1 job on CBS. And he just got, I firmly believe, I asked you the question before about the Eagles and making decisions because of what the fan base says or what the media says. Do you have to tone just a deaf ear to it, or do you actually let it factor into your thinking? I firmly believe that CBS did that with Phil Simms. There was such a hue and cry from the fans, social media, that Phil Simms wasn't good, terrible, got off. And I thought Phil was fine. I thought he was very good. But they ran his ass off the #1 team in broadcast to put Tony Romo in there. I thought it was just flat out wrong. So I think in broadcasting, there is a little bit more taken into consideration, because you're appealing directly to someone to say, hey, watch our broadcast because it's that good. But as I've learned from my partner, John McMullen, the NFL broadcasts are idiot-proof. People are going to watch anyway. Doesn't matter who the hell you put up there. They're going to turn it in record numbers. So I'm not sure why they overreact to the way fans look at things. All right, D's McMullen. I'm McDonald, Mac and MacBirds 365. We got a newbie joining the show. We've never had the pleasure of having Caden Steele from NJ.com join us before. Looking forward to talking to him next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
John McMullen, Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365 for the first time ever on Birds 365. What were we thinking not having them on the first 710 shows we did? Caden Steele from NJ.com going to jump in and talk some birds with us for the next 25, 30 minutes. Caden, how are you, buddy? How's your off season going?
Going well. Glad to be here with you guys. Always a big fan of the show. So to be here, on the 711 show, is an honor. So
711, yeah, we're gonna get you a Slurpee, Caden. Sorry. I saw some stuff Caden was doing over at NJ.com. Everybody should check it out. I said, well, we got to get Caden on. So here it is. I guess we'll start with your latest, and that's rebuilding the secondary, because I was talking about that. And obviously, I think, people talk about Vic Fangio. We're going to talk about Vic because he did a nice piece on him as well. But, I mean, we've seen this scheme for 3 years, different people running it. But I think we got a firm grasp of the style of defense he wants to play. And you mentioned 3 different ways you can rebuild the secondary. I do think you got to be very wary. I think Eagles fans are excited about go get L'Jarius Sneed. Do you really want a press corner in this scheme? You just saw Jalen Ramsey complaining about how he was used in Miami along with Xavier Howard. What's your philosophy when you look at the 3 ways to build this secondary?
Yeah, I think the top way that they should build the secondary. And I think it's funny that they haven't drafted a cornerback in the second round since 2017. And look, they've gotten Darius Slay in a trade in 2020, and that worked. But before Darius Slay, since Lito Shepherd, they didn't have a number 1 corner for a long time. And you got Bradbury. We don't know what's going to happen with him. And Slay, is getting up there in age. In my perspective, I think that, the top way that they could do it, they have 3 picks in the top, 63, top picks where it's a really good corner class and it's a really solid safety class. And I think that would be, the first way I would rebuild the secondary. I wouldn't go spend money on a L'Jarius Sneed, like you mentioned, John, or any of the other corners after him. Honestly, after L'Jarius Sneed, there's not much out there, in this corner market. It's not very strong. So I think, going through the draft would be my number 1 option, using that 22nd pick on whether that's Kool-Aid McKinstry or Cooper DeJean or any of those corners, Quinion Mitchell, who falls. And then the second round, there's going to be opportunities, to get a really good, slot corner potentially. Mikey Sandstrell from Michigan. We don't know what's going to happen with Avonte Maddox. People talk about Isaiah Rodgers, but he doesn't really play slot. He's mainly played on the outside, and we don't know whether his suspension is going to get left or not. So nickel's a need. Safety is going to be a need, and there's going to be safeties there in that second round. So I think you give Vic Fangio an opportunity to pick his guys in the draft, and you hope that Vic, part of the reason that he was hired, you think, is because there will be some stability there. Like, have him here for 5, 6, 7 years. He's back home, closer to home. Let him get some young guys that he can develop and he can groom into, potential Pro Bowl and All-Pro players. I don't think going out there and spending money on, the high-priced name is the way that this team should attack this secondary. It needs to just get younger and younger. And L'Jarius Sneed's a great player. But like John, like you said, I don't know if he's a scheme fit. So I think the number 1 way is just going through the draft. And number 2 is just you draft multiple defensive backs. Why not try
carpet bomb it? Yeah, yes. Carpet bomb it.
The more chances you take, the more likely you're going to hit on 1 or 2 players. And I don't see – I wrote – and I think I've been so impressed by what the Chiefs have done with Trent McDuffie and Sneed, and Jalen Watson, and Joshua Williams, and Brian Cook. Yeah. They've drafted so many defensive backs over the last 4 years. That's one of the reasons they have the best secondary in the league. Yeah, they signed Justin Reed and Mike Edwards back there, but they supplemented with a few veterans. But for the most part, they've gotten this young secondary underneath Steve Spagnuolo, and I think Vic can have similar success if you give him the right pieces.
All right, 2 questions then. If your philosophy is it's got to be youth, which is fine. And, oh, by the way, I don't think L'Jarius Sneed ever becomes available. I think the Chiefs going to franchise tag him, but we got to wait and see. We got another week before that becomes official. Job, Ricks, Ringo, 3 relatively young guys, 1 a year younger than the other 2, but all of them are considered young, no more than 2 years in the league. If one of them is going to step up and wow Fangio in camp and be great and force his way into more playing time, assuming health for everybody. Somebody gets hurt, yeah, you're going to be handed playing time. You're going to jump in and time like some of them did this year. Rank those three for me. Best chance to be a breakout corner for the Eagles in this upcoming year: Ringo, Job, and Ricks.
Yeah, I think first I would go with Ringo just because I think physically he has all the physical tools. He didn't drop to the 4th round last year because he couldn't run and because he didn't have those traits already. And I think we saw flashes last year where he looked pretty good at times as a rookie, and he looked aggressive and, tackling, and he was flying around the football. I think he's got the best chance to develop into a long-term starter in Philadelphia. And I wouldn't be surprised, maybe not next year, but maybe year 3, he takes that next step. I think number 2 for me would be Eli Ricks. I was impressed by him at times last year, but I also think there's a reason he went undrafted. He ran a slow 40 at the combine. He's not exactly the fastest corner in the world. I think he's got good ball skills and good instincts, but I think those physical limitations could make him more as a good, cornerback 4 or 5, like a nice backup that can come in and, play, when he needs to. And then number 3 is Josh Jobe, who, this is not to say anything against him, because I think Josh Jobe is a really good special teams player, and I think he could play, a little bit. He came in that New England game, played a few games last year, but I think he also struggled, at times last year. So those are the, in 3, I think, Ringo's the guy I have the most confidence in.
Is it crazy, Caden, to say essentially run it back at cornerback, and from the perspective of James Bradbury, for a couple reasons? One, I don't think anybody's going to argue he played poorly last year. I don't think anybody's going to defend that, but there are extenuating circumstances. He was moved around a lot. We all kind of raised our eyebrows when Sean Desai's talking about playing him in the slot in training camp. He said, what do you mean playing him? That makes no sense. Then he did it, out of necessity. They had to use about 8 different slot corners because of injuries and all the other issues. And then if you look at James Bradbury's history, he's been sort of an up and down player. He has a bad year, has an up year, has a bad year, has an up year, had a bad year, maybe he has an up year, was a second team All-Pro. He's a pure zone corner. We just talked about Vic Fangio. He's going to play him on the right side. He's not going to move him. Just play pure zone. He's a very instinctive player. He's a very smart player. He's a very savvy player. Avonte Maddox as well in the slot. Yes, you got to roll the dice. Injuries. You mentioned Isaiah Rodgers. I think we all know that the suspension is going to get lifted. He did play outside in Indianapolis, but his framework, that's because Kenny Moore was there. His framework is better set inside. Maybe he works out. Is it crazy to say, you know what? Too big of an issue to cut James Bradbury because of the contract. Let's run it back one more year, at least at cornerback. Is that crazy?
I don't think it's necessarily crazy, because I think under Vic Fangio, we've seen him have success with a lot of different corners. I think it's possible that James could resurrect his career in some sense, but you mentioned the back and forth. And yeah, that's true. He's been like that in the last year with the Giants. He wasn't that good. And then he was an All-Pro then last year, but now he's over 30. So taking that risk and bringing him back, there's no guarantee he's going to have that bounce back year again.
No.
And I think that is the worry. But if you're worried about the contract, for people out there that believe that James Bradbury is definitely gone, I don't believe that's the case. I think there is a scenario where he does come back and play well, but I wouldn't do it personally. I would try to go the youth movement. I would eat the contract for, what it is right now. I'd post June want it, pay for, some of it next year and eat the rest later, because from my perspective, this team currently, the way it's constructed going into next year, they aren't going to be, the top of the NFC as the Super Bowl contenders. It's more of a transition year, in my opinion. So why wait an entire year, to delay
That's
that?
fair. Start the youth movement early. I think I want to note the post June 1 designation. I think a lot of people misunderstand that. You can make it early, but you don't have that money until June 2nd.
Right.
So it's not like you get extra space to do a bunch of different things in free agency or even sign your draft picks. You have to wait for that money until June 2nd. So I think people kind of misunderstand that as well. So all of that factors into it. And I think you bring up an interesting point, Caden. A lot of it is, where does Howard Roseman think this team is right now? Are they a legitimate Super Bowl contender, or is it time to turn it over and get that youth movement involved? Jody?
And I'll ask the same question differently by using a player as an example. People keep throwing on our stream, on my WIP phone lines, on my social media, we got to get Snead. He's Jerry Snead. The Jerry Snead, best cornerback.
He is the best corner. He is the best corner, but
right. But I just don't think he's going to become available. I think the Chiefs are going to franchise tag him. The argument against it is, well, and what the hell do you do with Chris Jones? You try and get Chris Jones signed without having to use the franchise tag. Now, it's a decision. You got to make the call. You got to go one way or the other, and they need to do this before the franchise date, which is 1 week from today. Last day you can slap a franchise tag on somebody. Another interesting team, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They got Mike Evans, and they haven't been able to get a deal done with Evans, but they're still talking Evans. So all the guy does is go out and put up 1,000 yards every single year. I know he's a little long in the tooth, but damn, he's Hall of Fame level talent. Baker Mayfield. You want to pay Baker Mayfield, somebody's got to be your quarterback. You did well by going out, grabbing him, and giving him a shot. You can just lock him up for a deal and put it in place and then maybe continue negotiating with him. Or Antoine Winfield Jr., who I think is the best player. Of those three, Winfield's the best player. But the other two play very important positions. If safety isn't as important in the league for the Bucs, whatever else, if Antoine Winfield Jr. hits the open market, is that someone that the Eagles would go, all right, top of the market guy, we desperately need an upgrade at that position? Would he be a guy that the Eagles would aggressively pursue?
I think you'd at least look into, like you said, I don't think that's happening. I think that franchise tag is getting slapped on Winfield. I think Evans is going to hit them open market, and whether he comes back we'll have to find out where he goes. And then Mayfield, I think they'll get a deal done. So the chances of it happening is slim. But if you have a player of that magnitude, like for me, the difference with Snead is I have some questions whether Snead is scheme dependent with Spagnuolo. I think Antoine Winfield is a really, really good player. I thought that when he came out in the draft.
Phenomenal player.
Yeah, second-round pick. He's been incredible throughout his career. I mean, it's going to cost a ton of money to get that done. And my only thought on that is, we've seen that, the top safety on the market. I'm not saying, Antoine Winfield isn't better than Jarius Byrd or TJ Ward, at the time, but we've seen the Eagles go for that guy that isn't necessarily the number one safety or the number one edge rusher on the market. The guys who are the second, third, and fourth. And you got guys like Cameron Curl and Xavier McKinney and Jordan Fuller on this year's market. So I have a hard time believing that if he did become available, I think the Eagles would be interested. I just don't know if that what he would ask, I don't know if how he would be willing to pay, because I think he's going to break the bank. I think he might be once Tampa Bay, if they franchise tag him and re-sign him, he's going to be the highest paid safety in the league. I just don't know how he would do that.
By the way, I think there's a better chance that McKinney gets franchise tagged by the Giants than Winfield does by the Bucs. I'm not saying McKinney's a better player. I'm saying the Giants don't have anybody else to tag. Tampa, you could make an argument for two other guys to potentially tag.
But I go back, guys, I go back to scheme. All that. McKinney's a better fit for what the Eagles want to run. Winfield's a better player, but Winfield is that guy. Winfield lines up in the box. He can play in the slot. He can play a third safety. He's almost like a rover. He can play.
You think he couldn't cover? I think Winfield could do anything you ask him to do.
I think he could do, but why do you want to waste a player playing cover quarters and cover two and cover? I mean, if you sign Antoine Winfield, use him like Antoine Winfield. The Eagles aren't going to do that. Same thing. We had this discussion with Kyle Hamilton, Caden, coming out of the draft. I was like, that kid's amazing. And luckily I got that one right. He wouldn't be amazing here. They're just putting him in center field. Maybe he'd make a play occasionally. And you brought up a name I brought up at SI. If you're being realistic and you want the Eagles to get players that fit their scheme, Jordan Fuller, man, from the Rams, he's a good player. He's a free safety. He's a ball hawk. He spends all his time in center field, deep quarter, cover 2. They play the same essential scheme. Perfect fit. Same thing we were talking about at corner. I don't want L'Jarius Sneed. That's why I'm saying maybe Vic Fangio can rescue James Bradbury. Jody brings up Rasul Douglas, and I don't think Rasul wants anything to do with Philadelphia anymore, but he's a great zone corner. Give me a zone corner. Give me somebody who excels in zone coverage. You talk to a lot of people about Vic Fangio. I think you can bang your head on against the wall. Is he going to change from the people you talk to? Is he going to evolve? Is it going to be different? If you bring somebody in like Sneed or Winfield, will he utilize them or will he stick them in his scheme?
I think he will utilize them. The vibe I got is that he's willing to, from the players I'm talking from, coaches, that he does, look at the strengths of certain players and he adapts in that way. But I do think he is very, I want to say he's definitely stubborn to the scheme he runs, but he likes things a certain way and he teaches details a certain way. He runs his defense, a certain way. And I thought, the one that stood out to me is I talked to former Eagles safety Quentin Demps, and he said when he arrived in Chicago, and this is 8-7 years ago, so things could be different now. But we've seen some ruffle between him and Dolphins players, and maybe he doesn't want to change necessarily. But the thing he said is that when he went there, he was used to playing coverage a certain way, and Vic wasn't really necessarily, I'm just paraphrasing, not wanting to bend or on what Demps was already used to or kind of adjust. And Demps at that time, he said, he didn't buy into it. And he wishes he could go back and do it because he realizes, how much success his Fangio has had and how much he could have helped his career in those latter stages if he just listened. But the overall takeaway I got from the guys, I talked to was that, Vic does the things, a certain way, for his defense and for the players on, that come in, I don't know if he's necessarily going to change his entire scheme. I think he will help them understand his scheme. I think he'll teach details to them. I think he'll do everything he can to get the most out of their strengths. But I think there is going to be a certain type of player that he likes and that he covets. And I don't think he's going to all of a sudden start running a bunch of press coverage and jamming, wide receivers at the line of scrimmage and start sending a ton of blitz. I just don't think, he's done that throughout his career. And he's had so much success, not doing it. So at this point, from the people I've talked to, I don't think he's going to switch. And that's why, like a guy like Winfield might not make sense, or Sneed, or any of the other guys you mentioned.
Caden, when the Eagles powers that be are made available to the media today in Indianapolis, how is Howie Roseman going to respond when asked, why did you grant permission to Son Reddick to go out and check the open market and see if there's a trade out there? How will Howie explain it without going, yeah, we're letting somebody else do our negotiating for us?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess for everyone who's going to be there today, they're going to have to find out. To be honest, don't expect Howie to give much of an answer to that question. He's going to beat around the bush and try every way not to say that, or not to give anything out there. But it looks similar to, the Darius Slay situation kind of last year where they're letting him search for that contract. I mean, from what it looked like, Slay, got close last year to going elsewhere. And then last second, they got something done. So
it was on his way to Baltimore.
Yeah.
Heading down I-95. Even tweeted about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's a little bit of that situation. I just find it, different and more unique because Hassan is still under 30. He's still one of the elite edge rushers in the league. And not to say Slay wasn't good at, throughout most of last season, but we saw a little bit of a decline at the end of last year. He hasn't fully fallen off. He's still a good player, but this is a different situation. And it comes back to my thought. If you think this is a transition year for Howie Roseman and you really don't believe that you are a Super Bowl contender and that you want to rebuild this roster for the next 2 or 3 years so that you can have a couple more runs with Jalen, you still believe in Jalen, you still believe in your overall franchise, and you kind of want to do that transition, then maybe you get rid of Hassan Reddick for, if you get blown away with an offer. But if you believe that you're a contender, I find this, kind of odd that they're going to let him, at least look for another team or another deal.
No, I agree with you. We used the phrase, probably overused the phrase, all in. It's more of a poker phrase than anything else. Push all your chips into the middle of the table. You can't let Hassan Reddick walk out the door and tell me you're all in. I'm sorry, you can't. If Howie Roseman tries to do that at any media session this year, I hope John McMullen calls him on the carpet for it. You're lying. If you let Hassan Reddick walk out the door, you cannot then turn around and say, yeah, but we're all in for a championship this year. No, you're not.
Yeah, it's a difficult. So I'll end it there at Caden_Steele19. Make sure you follow Caden on X, Twitter, if you like to call it that. NJ.com does a great job with our buddy Chris Franklin and Bob Brookover covering the Eagles. You mentioned that a couple of times, Caden. So I'm going to ask you to put on Howie Roseman's hat. And where do you think the Eagles are? Do you think they should be going all in? Or do you think, nope, you know what? We really got knocked down the peg. Nick Bosa's right. The league figured us out. We gotta take a step back to take two forward down the line.
Yeah. If I were to put on Howie's shoes, I would look at the roster and say, we're not too far away in a sense. I still have AJ Brown. I still have Devontae Smith. I still believe in, Jalen Hurts and most of the offensive line core that we're developing. And we know we're going to draft more offensive linemen, in this year's draft and next year's draft to keep developing. I feel good about my offense, but my defense is not close to winning a Super Bowl currently. We're getting, we're old in the secondary. We're getting old up front. We didn't get a ton of pass rush, production last year. We don't know what Jordan Davis will necessarily become. We don't know what Nakobe Dean will become. I think, if I were Howie, I'd view it as this defense needs a reset for the most part. And good thing, they have Vic Fangio to help, usher that. But I think they're a year away. I still think this team's a playoff team next year, a wild card or a division winner. But you look at teams like Detroit and San Francisco, they're built so strong. I know Detroit's defense, it's got some questions about San Fran's defense. Detroit's defense has some pieces, and the offense especially, they have so many weapons. I just don't see a world where you don't completely reset this defense where you're competing next year. I think if you go all in, I don't know if that necessarily fixes everything for the long haul. And I think if you look at the offense, you have young pieces, why not build up a young defense, on the other side, like Kansas City's done for the last 3 or 4 years. And it helps when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. So things are different. But
the cheat code, it helps.
Patrick Mahomes cheat code. All right. Last thing, Caden. Did a good job. We're going to have you back on the show again. Thank you very much for doing this today. And it's February, and it's cold out. I don't know. Are you a dog guy?
It's not that cold out today.
McMullen and I have already been out. It's a little chill. It's February. It might but not be Arctic February, but it's February. So we didn't expect you to do the show outside. At some point, you like Chris Franklin are going to have to find a good outdoor spot to be able to broadcast when we get you on in the spring and for summer. And
Chris goes outdoors, man.
He does. And he's got birds in the background. We think they're eagles. We think that they're mocking John and myself, kind of like our boy here, John Bell on Twitter, on our feed. So in future reference, when the weather warms, we need you to guarantee us you've got a good outside spot to broadcast from. Can you make that commitment?
Yeah, I can make that commitment. I got
You're in. You're in. You're done. You're done. You're going to be back with us again. Caden, good job. Thank you very much. Thanks for hopping on. We'll talk to you again down the road.
Thanks, bud.
Thank you.
Caden Steele, NJ.com here with us on Birds 365. All right, quickie timeout. Come back. There is one more issue I want to bring up with John McMullen. It's quasi-Eagle related. It's related to all 32 teams. The fact that they're not going to make a rule change during this offseason. And I think the NFL has, appropriately enough, fumbled the football. You'll find out what I'm talking about when we come back next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Coming back to put a bow on the show here on Birds 365, Mac and Mac, guys. John, it was reported in various outlets yesterday that the NFL is probably not going to do anything about changing their rules on fumbles that go out of the back of the end zone, the side of the end zone, whatever. They're fumbled in the field of play, but go out of play through the end zone. Why not?
No problem with it. This is one we talked about this. I forget who we were talking about. I don't even understand this one. I really don't. I'm like, I don't know, maybe because it's been that way forever. I'm like, I don't get why people have such an issue with that one. I don't have a problem with it at all.
I'll try and explain it to you.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually pretty easy to understand. If you fumble the ball out at the 6-inch line, you retain the ball at the 6-inch line. If you fumble the ball and it goes 6 inches past the pylon and goes out of bounds, the other team gets the ball and they get it at the 20-yard line. Why the massive difference in the outcome of where the ball is placed and who possesses the ball when we're talking about a foot difference on the field?
Because that's that's the rules of the game. You know that going in. It's like overtime, right?
No, I understand the rules of the rules. What's the logic behind the rule? Why would you award a defensive team the ball? A drastic decision to give them the ball, not only give it to them, but give them out at the 20-yard line.
How far
and
are
they
we going to
basically
go?
made the same defensive play 1 foot apart.
If the ball goes out of the end zone, it's a touchback. How it doesn't matter in any circumstance. How are we going to define it as? Again, there's some things like overtime, and I bring up overtime for a reason, because they keep changing it, where they've changed it numerous times from for years and years and years. It was sudden death. It was sudden death. It was sudden death. Then somebody didn't get to see Josh Allen because he's having a great, and they lose their mind. We got to see Josh Allen. He's got to be able to get the football. And they changed the whole thing. And they change it in the regular season. They have a different rule. See, that's the kind of stuff I don't understand. It was sudden death. Is it completely, do some teams not get the football? Yes, it's always been that way, but they change it, go back and forth. Now, here we are with a rule that's been in existence for as long as I've been covering the sport. It's never changed. Why now? Why? If you're here's where if you're holding out the football at that 6-inch line and trying to get in the end zone, that's part of the strategy of the game. Coaches teach you, don't do it. Don't do it. If we got the ball first and goal or fourth and goal at the 6-inch line, we'll take it rather than trying to stretch over. That's part of the things they talk. I don't get the problem with it. If you're reaching the football and you make that dumb mistake and it's a mental mistake, yeah, I got no problem. You're penalized. Other teams' football.
Right. And here's how I would penalize. The football gets placed back to the 20. It's a touchback, but there doesn't necessarily have to be a change of possession. You're attempting to reach over. You're on that pylon. You're diving. The defense makes a nice play. They get their hand on the ball. It goes out of bounds. You get to keep the ball, but you lose 20 yards. It gets moved back out to the 20. Why does there have to be a change of possession? Just because the rule has been the rule for 90 years?
Well, why does it have to change? Because you're upset that your team lost the football.
To begin with, I think it's been wrong for 90 years. You're awarding a team for an okay play with a much bigger prize at the end than you should.
How about you're knocking a team down for a dumb play, a mental mistake? You're giving the opportunity. And by the way, everything skews towards offense in this league. The defense gets a little bit. Maybe somebody punches the football out like Kansas City did. Justin Jefferson did it once this year. I remember that one. That the defense makes a good play. Give them a freaking break for once.
It's a two-part play. Punch the ball out, recover the ball. If you don't recover the ball, then you don't get the big payoff. If the ball dribbles out of bounds, that you made a half a big play, you're being overly rewarded for a half a big play.
Everybody knows going in what the deal is. Defenders are trying to punch the football out on purpose because they know if they punched it out the 6-yard line and they're near the end line and it trickles out, they know it's their football. Offensive players know it as well, and they're taught ad nauseum, do not reach for the pylon. Do not reach for the pylon unless you're going to get there. And if you're reaching, you better damn well get there. Don't give them the opportunity. I got no problem with it. I mean, zero problem. It's just, you know what it is that bothers me? It doesn't bother me, but now that you're saying it, everybody just wants points. Screw points. It's been a part of the game. I don't care if somebody wants to change it because their team got affected by a dumb play, whether it's a superstar like Justin Jefferson down to a meaningless player who's maybe making a bad play that doesn't play that much. Who cares? Everything doesn't have to be about points. It's part of the game. It's been a rule. There's no issue with the rule. There's nothing. There's 100 rules that are dumb with this league. And almost every one of them, Jody, is because they over-legislated and they overthought things. And they change things because people are complaining in the moment, like they complain with Josh Allen. And now you got coaches and players who don't even know the freaking overtime rules, all because of Josh Allen didn't get the football and a bunch of.
I'm just going to give you my position. I don't give a flying fart what anybody else says or anybody else thinks. I've been saying this is a dumb rule for my 30 plus years of broadcasting. I'm not a Johnny come lately because it happened to this team this year. And oh my God, we got screwed. Let me suggest a rule change. I've been saying it for 30 plus years.
I never saw a groundswell. I'm not saying you didn't. I never saw a groundswell until recently. Now I see it all the time. I never saw it before. Nobody had an issue with it. Yeah, I remember covering Amp Lee. Amp Lee did it in the playoff game. Nobody had an issue with it. They said, oh, that's a dumb play. What are you trying to do?
Apparently, you weren't listening to Jody McDonald on WFAN in the 80s, because that's how long I've been saying this. And them to just dismiss it again doesn't mean that just because it's been in place forever that it has to be held.
Well, the good news for you, Jody, is they will eventually change it because the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And enough of these, and I'm not talking about you.
No, well, I want you to talk about me. If I need to be the squeaky wheel to get this changed, count me in as the squeaky wheel, because this is one of the dumbest rules in the National Football League.
It'll happen in the playoffs, and everybody will whine and cry and complain like the Cody crybabies in pro wrestling as WrestleMania gets everybody complains about everything, like the trolls in the chat. Suck it up. It's been that way. It's a rule. There's a bunch of rules. The offensive players know it. The defensive players know it. It's not like overtime. It's not like a rule they don't know. Everybody knows it. It's just a bunch of people who are complaining. We need more points. We need more points because we can't keep these morons' attention level unless it's 45-40.
Hopefully,
who cares?
Hopefully, Kyle Shanahan will alert his entire team about the rules if there is a change this year, which apparently there isn't, but going to be. Shame on the National Football League. All right, Mac and Mac, we're back again tomorrow. Yeah, we'll probably be talking about what Howie and Nick have to say. I'm back in 22 hours. You, Johnny Mac?
Let's do it, Jody.
McDonald and McMullen, Birds 365, back in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.